Test blah 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 blah. Pile. So I'll just kind of show where I'm sitting at these days, and not say much about them. Rasputin #3. I haven't read issue #2 yet either, but I really liked issue #1. I thought it was pretty great, so I'm looking forward to checking that out. Somewhere along the line I missed issue #2 from this one that, again, I talked about it before in a video, The Humans. This is issue #3, and I'm pretty excited about this. The first issue I loved. I thought it was really entertaining. And again, just to reiterate the point, in the back matter, in the back pages, with every issue they have some music that's available to download for free. And then by the time the end of the series, you'll have like a compilation of music that goes along with the book, which I think is a great idea. And then on the back page again, they have on the outside cover, they have a pin-up from this artist, Skinner is his name, and then in the inside they have a little blurb right up about him. I think that's a really cool side to the story. As much as I love the story too, I think that's really is a really neat idea to do, to give other people exposure in your book. One of my favorites, Elektra. I'm on issue #9. Again, haven't read this one yet. Today I picked up Fade Out issue 4, and I saw that there's already a trade paperback out, which is strange to me because I thought it usually went 6 issues before they put one out. And I'm wondering if the first issue was like a double-sized or something as far as like content for story. So I'm curious about that. But yeah, the first 3 have been great, so I'm looking forward to that. Grant Morrison and Chris Burnham, how can I pass up those two? Because especially Chris Burnham, I love Chris Burnham. So this is Nameless. Again, I haven't read this one yet. That's the first issue. And today when we bought comics, he had a reasonably priced old Daredevil. This is the King Size Annual #4 with Namor and the Black Panther, so I grabbed that. And something that I knew was coming out, I didn't know that it was out, but I saw a couple of people having it as their book of the week, including like Ghost Critic and Costin Bromstar, so I'm super excited. This is the Savage Sword of Criminal. First one I asked, he gave me the comic-sized issue, and I was like, oh, this one. So then I said, well, do you have the magazine one? And he turned around and he pulled it from behind the counter, so I'm glad that he did, because this is the one that I want. Love Criminal, have always loved Criminal. I have the kind of the hardcover editions. I also have all of them in single issues as well too. It's been one of my favorites for a long time. So I'm really excited to have this this one-shot, this one-off story, because I just love the team, period. And the noir crime element in this one is pretty amazing for me as well too. So that's going to be a highlight. I'm really looking forward to that. And then just 2 other quick things. I was thinking about it today, and I'm just curious about people's thoughts. So when I buy new comics, we use these. I use these, the Comic Care, and they're the current size comic covers for the bags and the boards. Now what I'm noticing with some of as I was recataloguing some of my books that are in, and it partially might be because I have too many books in the boxes. When you look at them from the top, instead of sitting like that, they're kind of sitting like this, which for some of the issues is causing a little bit of like a spine roll, which it's where my OCD kicks in a little bit, and it bothers me a little bit. It doesn't bother me that much, like I don't lose sleep over it, but I am wondering if, because I've spent all this time rebagging and boarding, and obviously for the Silver Age I use the Silver Age size. I don't use, obviously you can't fit the Silver Age stuff in these, so I use the appropriate ones for the era. But I've heard different thoughts on the bags and boards for the modern. Do you guys use the Silver Age bags and boards even for your modern books, just to give the board that much more space for the comic to sit in? Does that help with issues of spine roll? Again, I realize that I'm probably packing my boxes a little too tight. I could probably take maybe even 5 issues out of each box, and that would loosen things up a little bit. But part of me feels like that packing tight is something that should occur. So yeah, I'm just curious people's thoughts about that. And the last thing was going to be sort of covering, Spiro had a video where he had 3 questions because he's writing a book on collecting, on comic book collecting, period. And since Mr. Tom was here, one of the questions might sort of relate to him. So he had 3 questions. One of them was about getting comic books slabbed, like by CCG or whatever the new one is called. I don't even know. I've never gotten anything slabbed. I don't really have the desire to, because for me, it's about collecting the comics. Sure, collecting and keeping them in good condition is important for sure, but I kind of like to have the ability to pull out those old issues and see them. I mean, granted, part of it also is that I don't own any exceptionally expensive or rare books, so I don't even feel the need to have the comics in my collection, any of them in slabs. Now, if I got, for example, say Daredevil #1, I think it would be the same thoughts as far as like I would like to have the ability to look through that comic, even if it was something that cost me a little more money. I think that also leads into a question of what I'm willing to pay for comics, you know, and something, even when I saw a moderate Daredevil #1, it was still $700, and I'm in no financial place, and even if I was, that I could even justify spending that much money on one comic book, you know. So that's my thoughts on that. And also Nick had a really good, ETA Nick had a really good video about it, that the amount of people that are slabbing books these days is actually causing a drop in the price overall for books that are slabbed and graded like that. So because now there's so many of them, whereas before it was like there's only, say, five of this X-Men issue number whatever that are slabbed, so it makes them harder to find in good grade, that you can actually get the money. It becomes a push and pull, you know. Okay, so sorry about that rough editing there. I realized as I was talking I couldn't remember exactly what the questions were. So that pretty much answered the first one. So I think his second one was about digital comics, and this one necessarily isn't for Mr. Tom here. Just about how digital comics play a part in your life, and they don't play a part in my life. It's funny because I had a bit of time there, and I've still got a lot of them on my little e-reader and on the computer. There was a time where it seemed like it was a bit of a novelty, especially in the fact of finding old issues that, again, it kind of ties into the first one, stuff that I could never afford, but wanted to see an original copy of it, because the beauty of some of those digital stuff, especially the stuff I was finding, it was scans of those old issues, not like scans of the reprints from a book where it's all been cleaned up and stuff. So I loved seeing like the old books, and that's really, that comes down to exactly what it's a part of for me. You know, when I see stuff like this, I get excited about stuff like this because I like the fact that it's been read, and I like the fact that there's some creases, and I like the fact that sometimes the color is faded, or the techniques they used to color the comics were different than. I like all those things about it. I love the modern books too, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love them. But that old style has been really great. So I mean, for me, digital doesn't play a huge part in it for me, because that's not my first thought. My first thought isn't to get the codes from the book to download the book digitally. My first thought is, oh, I would love to get to the comic shop and hunt down that issue, or get that issue so we can sit and read it, you know. So I don't, and like I said, I don't read the stuff that I do have digitally. I haven't looked at that, honestly, for months. I haven't looked at my e-readers since October last year, I think. So I mean, that's what, like 5 months have gone by, and I haven't given it a single look. And again, just to emphasize the point, it's been more helpful in finding stuff like a whole bunch of Mobius stuff, some early Batman stuff with Ra's al Ghul that I've wanted to read for a long time, early Daredevil stuff, early horror comics from the 50s and things I had good fortune in finding, whole bunch of things like that. I even found some Foom comics, the fabulous old Marvel Club or whatever the heck it was called, the things like that. So that's been what's fun about it. So then the third question is about just comic shops in general and collecting in general. What the atmosphere is like at the comic shops that we go to. And I mean, the one thing is when we do go, there's not always a lot of kids there, which I wish that some of the stores we went to there was more kids there, because I think it would be cool for you. The idea that he was trying to get across was that it becomes kind of a little social gathering as far as like how do you meet other people that are into comics. Is that something that, for example, when I used to go to Music Trader, I knew some of the guys that worked there, I knew some of the customers, so I'd go to Music Trader or Movie Village and I'd be able to hang out for a little while and talk to the people that work there and talk to the other customers, and just there was a bit more of a social aspect to it. So I would go to buy music, but I would go to hang out with people. And the idea is like that there's comic shops that are like that too. For example, today when we were out, we had a brief little chat with some other people who were there. We talked to the owner a little bit off and on. He's this one particular comic shop we went to today. He's not the overly friendliest guy. When we go to Galaxy, they're really friendly and we usually talk to them for a little while. For me, that social side of it is important. Do you wish that there was more kids, that maybe you could be looking through the shelf and pull out this one and the kid beside you could say, oh, that's a really great story? Like, would you like to have kids that you could talk to about comics? How important is that type of thing to you?
Well, for like, for some reasons that'd be nice, but for some reasons not, because like sometimes I kind of like figuring out what's gonna happen in the story by myself, seeing if it's good by myself.
Okay.
But sometimes I want to like know it's kind of gonna, like if it's gonna be good. But sometimes I just like figuring it out by myself.
So okay, well let's say that Winter Soldier #5 was the new, let's say that this one was the new comic on the shelf and you had read the other 4 and there was another kid who had read the other 4 as well and who hadn't read #5. So let's say it wasn't necessarily about like talking about what was going to happen in the story, but what if that sparked a, oh, you like that comic, I like that comic too. Like, would you like to talk to other kids about comics in general? Not necessarily like a specific storyline, but do you feel a need? Because I mean, sometimes we'll talk about comics like, oh, Dad, imagine if so-and-so and so-and-so teamed up. That would be super cool. Do you miss having some of that with some of your friends maybe? Like, do you think it would be fun to talk to your friends? Yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah.
So I think part of it is that it is too bad that there's not more of an element. Like I said, there is definitely, but I think it's more for me. When I go to these comic shops, I can talk to the owners, I talk to other people who are there, and that happens to me at all the comic shops. It's happened to me at all the comic shops I go to, at least once, sometimes more than that, especially at a place, again, like Galaxy, or there's another place in that same end of town that I've talked to the owner there quite a few times and just talked about books. But I think all that is changing, and maybe that ties into digital. Again, he's saying he doesn't know if none of his friends really read comics, they read graphic novels. I wonder if that ties into the digital thing, that the younger generation isn't necessarily reading the paper product, they're reading maybe more digital, or maybe they're just not interested in it at all. Go ahead.
They're not interested in it at all.
Really, hey?
Is what I hear, because like a lot of my friends like reading. A lot of my friends like they like the idea of like ebooks and stuff, but they like reading the book more.
Oh, really? They like reading the book more than the digital?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's good to know then.
Because
Yeah.
I know because also not as much people in our class have like an iPad or something to listen to them. Listen to it on like ebooks
or to read the ebooks on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, and I kind of wish, I think if he had more exposure to it, like if there was more kids at these comic shops, I think it might be something that would be cool for those kids. But again, even when we go to the conventions, I'm now thinking about, like, even the conventions that we go to, I don't see a lot of kids that are his age there. We'll have to really keep an eye on that in the next convention, just out of curiosity to see how that world goes. So you think for your friends, video games and things like that are more of the draw? And what about, like, the superhero movies? Do your friends like the movies? Do they watch those, or do they not even watch those?
Some of them will watch the movies and stuff.
Some, but it's not hugely popular.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. Okay, well, there you have it. I hope that sort of answers the question. Those were the 3, right? Yeah, that was the 3. The slabbing, the digital, and the atmosphere. Yeah, so I mean, I'm glad that the social atmosphere exists, and I mean, again, just to reiterate, like, I wish it was as much, because I find it hard sometimes to kind of cut in with those conversations, because some of the conversations, they're a little beyond me, because I don't, my memory doesn't work the same way as other people. My retention for, like, specific issues where specific things happened, I don't retain those kind of things as much. So sometimes there's conversations like that I just can't be a part of. But luckily, one of the guys at Galaxy, his tastes run a little more similar to mine, so we have a lot of ground that we can kind of talk about. And as far as, like, where I meet people, I don't meet people. I'm lucky enough that just throughout my life, I've known people who have been into comics. When I lived in Ontario, a couple of friends of mine were into comics. Now at my work, especially because I work in film, it's a little more artistically driven. There's a few people there that read comics. One of my good friends, he reads a lot more comics than I do, so we can talk about it quite a bit. We can spend a good hour or two at work where we can just talk about comics and what we're reading and stuff like that. His taste runs more towards the mainstream, whereas my friend in Ontario, who I mentioned in the example, his taste is all over the board like mine as far as, like, the independent stuff and things. So I haven't ever really found it hard to find people to talk to about comic books. Part of me wishes that there was almost like a little club that I think Spiro mentioned in his video. It would be neat to have a little club where there's people that could get together and talk about comics or whatever, but I don't know. I'm curious about it more for Mr. Tom. I think it would be cool if there was kids that he could talk to about the comics. Not that, you know, they have nothing else to talk about, because he's got plenty of friends and they have a great time talking about everything else. Yeah. But it is a fun part of the hobby. It's fun collecting stuff, and I love collecting, and but it's fun to discuss it, which is why I'm so glad that we have this YouTube group here that we can chat about our ideas and do videos like this. So yeah, that's about that. So anything else you wanted to add now that I've rambled on?
I don't really think anything else.
Well, thanks for joining me, Mr. Tom.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure to see you. And come back soon. I was telling Mr. Tom today that I have a pay-as-you-go credit card, and just yesterday I managed to put some money onto it. I'm kind of using it as a savings, so I don't spend the money. It doesn't get confused in the bank. It's specifically on this card. Because I'm saving up for Cave Evil, which is the Blast City, the Mushroom Eaters company. It's their game. Because Mr. Tom and I are really curious to play it, and when eventually we do get it, which I'm hoping in the next couple of months or so, we've talked about maybe doing another video where we focus on the game and we're gonna play it and show it off and stuff. So that'll be one of the next times that Mr. Tom joins us here on the Comic Crack YouTube extravaganza channel.
Yep.
Right on. Okay, everybody, thanks very much for watching and listening to me rattle on, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.